dedicating our learning to those that have been injured, those that have been in need of healing. Because it says the Torah is a samachayim. The Torah, the Gemara says, is called the elixir of life. It's an amazing thing. Which means anything that a person might be going through, any pain, any tribulation, any suffering, he has an elixir to heal him. It's called the Torah. The Torah Kadosh. And therefore, it's a very big refuah, it's a very big healing for those that need healing, those that need Yeshuas. My father and I were just by Tzimaya for Shabbos, so it's time to give us a bracha for something. So we're davening for that also, a certain Yeshua. Should be big Yeshuas, big salvations, big blessings, big healing for all those that need it. B'ezrat Hashem, Amen. We're in Parshas Vayishlach. I want to learn a little bit of Jumash. That's Spanish for Chumash. I want you to open up in Bereshis 33:1. I'm going to read it in English. 33:1. Why are we reading this? Because this is all about the encounter of Yaakov and Eisav, the encounter that we're up to in Reb Nachman, where Yaakov Avinu had traveled away. Where did he go from? V'yetze Yaakov Be'ersheva v'yelech Haran. He went to Haran. Who was in Haran? Who remembers? Lavan. And why did he go to Lavan's house?
For Rachel.
Well, he went to get married. He was sent away to find a nice shidduch. And he did get married, Baruch Hashem, 4 times. In Lavan Garti, V'taryag Mitzvah Shamarti, and even though he was in the house of the biggest evil, dark magic magician that ever existed, Lavan was known to be the leader of all the black magic sorcerers. The Gemara says that Lavan is who else? Bilam. It's the same person. That's deep. Because Bilam is the pinnacle of evil in the Torah. And that was Lavan. And Yaakov Avinu was able to go B'roiv Kedushasai with his tremendous holiness, and even though he was in the house of Lavan, in Lavan Garti v'Tarag Mitzvah Shamarti, he still kept all the Tarag Mitzvahs. And as he was leaving Lavan's house in the Charan Af, he's coming back to Eretz Yisrael. Now, who do you think was waiting for him? Somebody they encountered. Eisav. Remember brother Eisav? Now, why is Eisav upset with Yaakov? Well, he sold the Bechor. He sold the Bechor for a pot of lentils, but Eisav felt that it wasn't exactly the right, deal, and he realized that after the fact. And he was coming back to Eretz Yisrael, and of course, who was waiting for him? So the parsha begins that Yaakov sent malachim. He sent angels. Rashi says malachim mamish. He sent angels to go scout out and do reconnaissance to see what's happening with my brother Eisav. And the Torah now recounts their actual meeting. You're going to see in a moment how this all ties into the first piece of Rabbi Nachman. Let's look in the English part. In my edition of the Art School, it says, the encounter. Jacob raised his eyes and saw, behold, Eisav was coming, and with him was 400 men. Now, by the way, what we're about to learn now, we have a Messiah that any time that a person is about to encounter the world of Eisav, whether it be a business deal, whether it be a trip, whether it be some type of encounter that might be hostile, the Sfarim say that you should learn this parsha. Because this is Yaakov encountering that world and to know how to strategize and what to do. So Yaakov did 3 things. Anybody remember what happened? We're going to see in a second. Yeah, there.
He split his camp.
Split the camp, which means war tactics.
Back.
That's right.
And he got
Daven.
Sent presents.
And he sent gifts. Don't forget that one. You got to appease the enemy by sending gifts. It's amazing sometimes, just if somebody's not on your good side, but you send them, Mishloch Manas has a way of calming everything down. Sending gifts. I come bearing gifts. Okay? So he divided the children among Leah, Rachel, and the 2 handmaids, the 2 shifchus. He put the handmaids and their children first, Leah and her children next, and Rachel and Yosef last. We know that Rachel that Yosef went in front of Rachel. Now remember, he only went back when Yosef was born. That's a very big secret, because Yosef is going to be the point of victory. That only once he has Yosef is he now able to overcome the forces of Eisav. And we've already been learning this piece in Rav Nachman for some time. So you know, when I say the word Eisav, I don't just mean that historical figure, that hairy man that came out of the womb totally with fully grown teeth and nails and chest hair and a big beard, bright red, that was talking. I don't just mean that. I mean that part of you that says, I'm already done, asui. I'm already finished. I have nothing else to do. There's nothing, I don't need to do any more work on myself. No more spiritual work. I got it all figured out. That part, that's what we mean. So when Yaakov, who's the point of purity, the seichel shebachol davar, the chachma, seeing the first and everything, bumps up against Eisav, and Eisav is the kingdom of evil, he needs Yosef, like we're going to see. Then he went himself. He went on ahead of them and bowed eastward 7 times until he reached his brother. We know that was the 7 bows of Shemon Esrei, like the Gemara says. How many times do you bow in Shemon Esrei? The first baruch of the first bracha, the last baruch of the first bracha, then Moedim, then the Rabbanon. Oh, and then the 3 bows. You got it. Eisav ran towards him, embraced him. Now it's funny. It says that he embraced him, v'yipol ad savarav, and he fell upon his neck, v'yishakeyu v'yivku, and he kissed him, and then they wept. If you have the Hebrew edition, there's a very funny thing. It says above the word v'yishakeyu that he kissed him, there's dots. Anybody ever seen that on a Torah scroll before? That they put dots on top of the letters? You've seen that before? There's a number of words in the Torah that have actually dots on top of the letters.
In the Torah.
In the Torah. Which is a very interesting thing.
Is there 4 places?
Generally, when we have dots, it means that you flip the meaning. It's the opposite of what you think is happening. So v'yishakeyu, and he kissed him, it means Eisav didn't want to kiss him. He wanted to bite him like a vampire. It's not for now, but I have a whole shir on how Eisav was a vampire. It's not for now. Whoever thought that the Torah doesn't have sci-fi stuff, there's a lot of stuff going on here. A lot of indications. And that he bit him. But what happened? Hashem made a miracle. What was the miracle?
His neck turned to marble.
That Yaakov's neck turned to marble. And the second that Eisav tried to put his fangs inside of Yaakov, well, he broke his teeth, and that's why he cried. V'yivku. And then look at the interaction, next page. V'yisas eino, I'm going to go back to the English. He raised his eyes and saw the women and children. Eisav all of a sudden sees all. Did Eisav ever see Yaakov's children before? He never saw them before. Why not? Because when did Yaakov leave the house? He took the Bechorah, and then immediately his mother, Rivka, said, leave, go to Beis Lavan, go to my brother's house. You're going to find your soulmate there. And him and Eisav were single. They're bachelors. So he left, and then only the next time that he came back, 22 years later, he was already married with a whole Gansa family, a big family. And Eisav saw all this for the first time. And he said, who are these to you? Interesting. Who are these? Mi eilalach. Who are these to you? It's very funny wording in the Torah. V'yomer hayolodem asher chanan Elokim esavdecha. You notice an interesting word there? These are the children asher chanan. Oh, says Sam, it's like Chain. Isn't that been like the name of our game over here? Chain? These are the children, Sam, that God has chained to me. That is, God has graced me with. Now, if you learn the Torah simple, just a simple, basic meaning, okay, that sounds like a nice word, that God has graced me. It's very sweet. But we know, to really understand the Torah, you need to know the Torah in its original language. That's why if anybody ever wants to come and talk to you about the Torah, they say, it says in the Bible, in verse 24:16, the following. And they read it in English. You say, well, let's look at the Hebrew, because that's the text, that's the original. And if they know how to read the Hebrew, then there's a discussion. But if they don't, then it's not much of a discussion, because as soon as it's translated, there's a gap in the meaning. Specifically considering, my dear friends, that the written Torah is incomplete without the oral Torah. And the Torah in many, many places says, and you shall do the ritual slaughter like I have shown you. And then you look, and so where did it show me? It just went on to a new topic. So obviously it means what? That it showed us somewhere else. That's called the oral tradition. And the best one of how do you even read the Torah? Let's go to the beginning of the Torah. Anyone know what the first word of the Torah is?
Gracious.
Who said it's Bereshis? Maybe it's Abu Yahu G La. I'm not kidding. Let's start with the first letter. You said it's Bereshis? Maybe it's Virashis. How do you know it's Bereshis? Who told you?
Rabbi.
Your rabbi? Who told him? It doesn't say it in the book.
He made it up.
The oral tradition teaches how to read the letters, man.
The oral tradition, more than that. Not just how to read letters. What's a base?
Language is just one big oral tradition.
Yes, that's correct. So a person that would think, well, so the Torah is with a base, because look, I have a dot in my Bible. It says with a B, Bereshis. And in my Bible class they taught me that it says Bereshis. Well, who taught them? How do you know that a base is not an aleph? There was a heretic who came to the great Hillel Hazoke, and he wanted to say that there's only a written Torah, there's no oral tradition. So he said, well, why don't you read for me the Torah? And he said, well, Bereshis, Bar Elokim, Eisav, Shemayim, V'Yisrael. I said, no, who's told you that that's a base? Maybe it's an aleph. Maybe the Torah starts with an aleph. What do you say? Does it? Who told you that? How do you know?
Trust in the oral tradition.
Because somebody told you that that's a base and not an aleph. Well, who told him? Who told him? Who told him? Who told him? What's the end of the line? Moshe Rabbeinu. And who told Moshe? Hashem. And how do we know that? Because we were all there and we saw it. That's called national revelation. We all saw God give us the Torah and speak to Moshe. That's the authenticity of the oral tradition. They go one and part and parcel. They're one in the same. They're like two sides of the same coin. They exist only together. So, Eisav saw Yaakov and he said, who are these? And Yaakov said, these are the ones that God has graced me. But we don't just go with the word grace, we're going to use Chanan. Hashem did Chain. Remember, does Eisav accept there's a deeper truth to life? No. Eisav is the Russia, like back into side the Rav Nachman, Lo yachpoitz ksil besvunakim besgalas liboy. The fool does not look for anything deeper. Just whatever his heart shows him, whatever his heart bears, whatever he sees in front of him. Essentially, whatever the news says has to be true. If the news said it, it's got to be true, right? It's got to be true. Right? It's got to be true, the news said. Whatever they're trying to sell me in Times Square, it's got to be true because they're selling it there. The billboards, they can't be wrong, because who would have let them make a billboard like that? That's what we think. At least subconsciously, if we're still being influenced by Eisav. But Yaakov says, what's the deeper truth? What's the truth, the deepest truth? That God is here, and I'm not fooled by the veneer of this world, by the lies of this world. And Yaakov says, do you know where children come from? This is so deep. Children come from that place of chen. Holy children come because there's a chen. A child itself is a miracle. Think about that. It's a miracle, children. A child is not something that just like the stork comes along and drops off the baby. A child comes from the deep, like my ninth grade immigrant Russian gym teacher told me that's how it goes. More or less. And he said a few things in broken English. And then get back to gym. Children come from that deepest place of chen. That there's a deeper truth. There's something that's hiding. That the chen is bringing out the deepest truth and continuing that. That's why as soon as Eisav got there, he was like, he saw all these children. He was like, it was overwhelming. And Yaakov said, this only comes from chen, from something very deep, from a secret, special thing. Let's continue in the encounter. I'm back into the English, just to help us at least hear the language, and then we always go back into the Hebrew. Then the handmaids came forward, they and their children, they bowed down. Leah too came forward with her children, and they bowed down. And afterwards, Yosef and Rachel came forward and bowed down. And he asked, what did you intend by that whole camp that I met? He answered, look at this, again, to gain favor in my Lord's eyes. He's speaking very, very respectfully to Eisav. Because that world of Eisav, you have to be careful with. You have to treat kabdei v'chashdeu, treat with a certain amount of honor and carefulness. And he said, everything that I did here was yomer limtzei chen beinei adoni. I'm doing this that I want to give you and to show you this thing called chen, Eisav. Eisav, you're missing chen. I want to show you chen. I want to show you this grace, that there's a deeper truth to life. Eisav said, I have plenty. V'yomer Eisav yesh li rav. Essentially saying, I don't need your chen. He was still closed off. He was closed off to this world, but Yaakov is trying to help him. But Yaakov said, no, I beg of you. And look again. Imna matzasi chen beinecha. Again, chen. This whole encounter is chen. If I found chen, if I could just impart to you this entire Torah of the Chachma shebechol davar and the Seichel shebechol davar, and I could show you that there's a deeper light in creation, I'm trying to give that to you. I'm trying to help you, my brother Eisav. Because what was the original purpose of creation? The purpose is that Yaakov and Eisav would team up. Yaakov and Eisav would be like this amazing team. That Yaakov would be the one that would be the spiritual guide, but he would be totally subservient. And that Eisav would be subservient to the will of Yaakov, and Eisav would go into the world and build sanctuaries for God in this world. Could you imagine the power of Eisav building God's palace? Could you imagine giving, Bezos, chen, that he chapped it and he takes $150 billion or whatever we're up to nowadays, and he says, you know what, I'm going to build a beis medrash. I don't want to spend all of it in one place, so I'll just spend $5 billion on a beis medrash. What would that look like to you? I don't know how many floors, what kind of gold how many rubies and sapphires would be inlaid everywhere? Imagine giving that perspective of chen to the world of Eisav, giving Bill Gates, that he would understand chen. And he would say, I'm going to take all this money and I'm going to make Hashem a home. I'm going to build a beis medrash. I'm going to build a yeshiva. Well, all they do is they teach the wisdom of God. Like I keep telling you guys, when Moshiach comes, LeBron James is going to run to you. He's going to beg you. He's going to say, take whatever money. He's going to say, teach me, that's right, Dad. Teach me one Mishnah. I beg of you. You know a Rashi? You have a little bit of chayin? Please, I'm begging you. Just teach me some wisdom. Because the kingdom of Hashem, there's a kingdom of the other one. Please, I want to put everything to that kingdom. And even if he says, okay, $100 billion, okay, so here's 20 billion, I want to make sure that I spread it around. That we make sure that we can build a palace for God in all places. By the way, when Moshiach comes, that is what we're ramping up for. There's no shortage of resources in the world. There's just improper distribution. So once the whole world knows about Chayin and the secret of Yaakov Avinu, Eisav will be lit up. He will become like the moon. Yaakov will be the sun. Eisav will shine that light. And he'll be able to build and build. He'll be the kingdom. He'll go from the kingdom of evil and he'll flip to the kingdom of goodness. And he'll build wondrous things. It's already happening. People are starting to get going. People are starting to, like we were mentioning last time, that Drake is already talking about, coming to yeshiva, but instead he went to Ibiza and Nebuch, just a wrong decision. But there's a tshuva, there's a coming back. That's why I get so excited with Amari. Amari, what a yid. Such a beautiful yid. But Amari he's realizing everything that I had. I thought that I had the true kingdom. But I realized there's nothing like learning a piece of Gemara. Amari Stadama, there's nothing like learning a piece of Gemara. There's nothing like coming and learning some Chumash. A piece of Torah, with Torah Shabbal Peh, with the oral tradition. Amari's holding up the oral tradition. He's saying, this is it. This is the whole thing. Holding up a Mishnah Berurah, saying, this is my life now. This is it. This is the whole thing. Maybe a yid like Nisan Black is going around the whole world. He's saying, I saw what the world called Chayin. What the world calls Chayin. But that's Sheker HaChayin. That's the beauty that's Sheker HaChayin, the Hevel HaYofi. It's empty. But Isha Yiras Hashem, the Isha there is talking about the Torah that brings a person Yiras Shamayim, that makes a person feel awe for God, that God is the only true reality. The whole world is starting to come back to this. The whole world, and when Mashiach comes, Mashiach is going to teach us the ultimate Chayin. And this whole parsha is all about Chayin. Everything that Yaakov and Eisav, he's trying to help Eisav. He's saying, I'm trying to give you, my brother Eisav, a chance to join forces with me. But Eisav rejects it. And sadly, Eisav lost his opportunity. His offspring have the opportunity to do the fixing that Eisav was not able to do. And we daven that those offspring will be able to hear the message of what the true grace and the true beauty is. The everlasting beauty. So Bezrat Hashem, we're davening for Mashiach. That Mashiach should come very, very soon. And during these days now, we're transitioning towards the 3 weeks, which the Navi says these will be days of Moyed, of Simcha. They're going to turn from the 3 saddest weeks to the 3 happiest weeks, as we're already getting ready for the 3 weeks. And the birth of Mashiach, which is on Tisha B'Av, where Mashiach reveals himself in his full splendor. And the 3 weeks become the biggest Yom Tov in Chol HaMoed. And we're going to be able to teach the wisdom of God to all of humanity. Bezrat Hashem, it should come with Mashiach. It came in the Binyan Beis HaMikdash B'mher V'Yameinu. Amen.
Amen.